The warning. The galaxy was wide and endless, filled with countless stars and empires, but among them stood one of the most feared powers, the Galactic Empire. For thousands of years, they ruled with iron ships and burning fire. No world dared to resist them, no colony dared to rise against them. To the Empire, all others were weak, all others were small. Yet there was one region of space the Empire had never crossed. It was called Terran territory. Once it was ignored, just a small blue planet and its children. But over the years, strange whispers spread. Merchants said Terran ships appeared in silent corners of the galaxy, then vanished. Soldiers told of patrol fleets that entered Terran borders and never returned. The Empire called these stories lies. They said humanity was nothing, only a minor species that got lucky. The Emperor himself mocked the rumors, declaring, "If Earth dares to warn us, let them face our fleets." But then a strange thing happened. A transmission came across the stars, carried on a band no one dared to block. The message was short, simple, and sharp. It said, "This is Terran Command. The borders of Terran space are closed. Any ship that enters will not return. You are warned." For the first time in centuries, the halls of the Galactic Council grew quiet. Some laughed, but others frowned. They had seen too many disappearances, too many unspoken mysteries. But pride was stronger than fear, and pride ruled the Empire. Admiral Kravos, commander of the 5th Imperial Fleet, was the first to speak against the warning. He stood tall in his shining armor, his voice proud. "We will not be threatened by shadows. We will enter their space, and we will prove to the galaxy that Terrans are weak." His words echoed in the council chamber, and the Emperor approved. Soon, orders spread across the fleet. The first step was simple. A scout ship would cross into Terran space. It was a test, a demonstration, a show of power. The Empire wanted to prove that humanity's warning was nothing but an empty threat. The scout ship, named Iron Spear, carried a crew of 50. They were proud, loyal, and fearless. The captain laughed as the transmission repeated. Warning them once more, he said to his crew, "Terran words are wind and we are fire. Watch how quickly their silence breaks." The ship crossed the border. The moment it did, the crew noticed something strange. The stars seemed darker. The space seemed heavier. Their sensors began to flicker. Systems that always worked started to glitch. Communications cut in and out. But the captain ordered them forward. Minutes passed, then hours. The ship kept going deeper, but nothing appeared. No Terran ships. No defenses. It was as if the space itself was empty. Then, without warning, the lights flickered once more, and the ship was gone. No distress call, no alarm, no explosion. Just silence. Back in the council chamber, the fleet waited for the report. No signal came, no message arrived. The scout ship had vanished. Admiral Kravos frowned but stood firm. "They are hiding, they are playing tricks," he declared. "We will send more, we will break their games." But among the lower ranks, whispers began to spread. Soldiers asked one another in secret, "Where did the ship go? How can a whole crew vanish without a sound?" Some remembered stories of ghost fleets drifting in Terran space. Some spoke of weapons that killed without fire. The Emperor dismissed these fears. He ordered another group of ships to prepare, stronger and larger this time. He said to his people, "Terran space is nothing, and we are everything. We will teach them what happens when the Empire is mocked." But deep inside, in corners no one saw, a quiet unease began to grow. The galaxy had heard the warning, and now they had seen the silence, and silence was louder than any roar. The silent border. The disappearance of the scout ship Iron Spear shook the Empire more than they would admit. In the council halls, leaders laughed loudly, calling it an accident. They said the ship's captain was careless, or perhaps a star. Flare destroyed it, but in the quiet corners of the fleet no one laughed. Soldiers whispered of Terran shadows that swallowed ships whole. Admiral Kravos was not a man who feared shadows. He believed only in strength. His fleet of 100 warships now hovered near the edge of Terran space. They formed a wall of steel and fire, ready to march forward. The border itself looked empty, only a stretch of stars and dark silence. But silence itself can be a weapon. The ships waited, scanning the void. Every hour, the Terran warning repeated. A single signal, cold and sharp. Terran space is closed. Do not enter. You are warned. The same words again and again, unchanging, unbroken. The crew began to hate the voice. Some even feared it, for no machine should sound so alive. Day after day, the Imperial fleet stood at the border, expecting something, but nothing came. No enemy, no ships, not even debris. Just silence. Some junior officers began to feel the weight of it. They said the stars here felt wrong, colder than anywhere else. It was as if they were being watched. One night, Captain Vera of the destroyer Steel Wing reported strange readings. Her sensors picked up movements, shadows flickering at the edge of detection, but when she looked again, nothing was there. The Admiral dismissed it, saying the machines were failing, but the whispers among her crew grew louder. Something is there. Something waits for us. Then the malfunctions began. Small at first, screens flashing, engines humming off-beat. One ship lost its long-range scanner, another lost half its comms. Mechanics swore everything was in perfect condition, but the failures kept coming. The border was eating the fleet, piece by piece. On the third day, a cruiser named Iron Maw lost all power. In an instant, its lights went out, engines stopped, and the ship drifted silently toward Terran space. Alarms screamed across the fleet. Rescue ships tried to pull the cruiser back, but the moment they touched the edge of the border, their systems began to fail too. Admiral Kravos ordered the ship destroyed. A single blast from a battleship turned Iron Maw into fire and dust. The fleet watched in silence. No one cheered, no one spoke. 100 voices asked the same question in their hearts. What killed the ship before our weapons did? The Emperor's advisors demanded reports. The Admiral sent them words of victory. He claimed the Empire held firm. He said Terran tricks could not harm them. But the truth in the void was different. Fear was spreading, and silence was feeding. At late that cycle, something new happened. At the very edge of the border, faint lights appeared. They looked like stars at first, but they moved. They pulsed with a rhythm, slow and steady. The fleet watched them with growing unease. Were they ships? Were they weapons? No one knew. The sensors tried to lock on, but the lights faded every time. Captain Vera whispered to her crew, "They are watching us." Her words spread through the ranks like fire, and once fear has a voice, it cannot be silenced. The next morning, the Terran transmission changed. For the first time, new words echoed through the fleet. Last warning, leave now. The voice was calm, not angry, but it carried a weight that chilled every soul who heard it. Admiral Kravos clenched his fists. His pride burned hotter than fear. He ordered his fleet to prepare. Engines roared, weapons charged. The Empire would step into Terran space. But deep, inside, even Kravos felt it. The silence had teeth, and they were already inside its jaws. The first strike. The Emperor's orders arrived across the stars. They were simple. Advance, show no fear, break the silence. The Imperial fleet of 100 ships roared to life, engines burning bright against the dark. Admiral Kravos stood at the command deck of his flagship, his eyes sharp, his pride unshaken. The border of Terran space shimmered like empty night, but to the Empire, it was nothing more than darkness. Kravos raised his hand, and with a single order, the fleet crossed. At first, nothing happened. The stars remained still, the void remained silent. A few officers even laughed, whispering that the rumors were false. But deep in the crew's hearts, fear twisted like a knife. They remembered the vanished scout. They remembered the drifting cruiser. Then, in the middle of that silence, something moved. It was fast, too fast for Imperial eyes. A flash of light ripped across the void. One of the destroyer's blade of fire suddenly tore apart. No warning, no alarm, no defense, just a clean strike that cut through its core like paper. The crew never even had time to scream. The fleet froze, their sensors screaming with confusion. No enemy ship was detected, no projectile was tracked. Yet blade of fire was gone. Admiral Kravos growled and ordered the fleet to open fire. Dozens of cannons lit up the void. Plasma bolts and missiles raced into the dark. But they hit nothing. Only empty space burned. Then came the second strike. A cruiser, iron wing, twisted as if some invisible hand had crushed it. The ship bent, broke, and exploded into dust, again without a single target showing on their screens. The silence returned, heavier than before. Whispers filled the comms. "We are not alone. Something is out there." Officers begged for orders, and Kravos, red with fury, demanded tighter formations. The fleet huddled together like prey in the dark. Minutes stretched like hours. Every sensor scanned, every eye searched, yet nothing appeared. The crews were sweating, waiting for the next strike. And then it came, from the far side of the void. A sound emerged, not through speakers but directly in their minds. A low hum, deep and sharp. It felt like the stars themselves were vibrating. Crew members clutched their heads. Some fell to the floor screaming. And then, through the hum, the Terran voice returned, calm and merciless. "You were warned." Suddenly, the darkness lit up. Dozens of streaks of fire cut across the stars. Railgun rounds moving at impossible speeds. They were faster than light to the naked eye. They tore through 3 battleships in seconds, leaving nothing but wreckage. The fleet panicked, firing wildly into the void, but there was still nothing to see. Finally, the sensors caught something. Shapes moving at the edge of vision, sleek shadows drifting among the stars. Terran ships, but they did not glow. They did not roar. They were silent hunters, camouflaged in the void itself. They struck, vanished, and struck again. The Empire had faced many enemies, but never this. Never a foe that turned the darkness itself into a weapon. On the bridge of his flagship, Kravos shouted, his pride breaking into rage. "Show yourselves, cowards." But the only answer was another strike. This time, it was his escort ship, blasted apart with a single silent shot. The explosion lit the void, and for a heartbeat, the Imperial cruise saw it, a Terran warship vast and black. Its shape was sharp and angular, like a blade carved from the night. No lights, no banners, only silence. Then it vanished again like smoke in the wind. Terror spread through the Imperial fleet. The crews no longer whispered, they screamed. Some ships broke formation, engines, pushing them back toward safety, but Kravos roared at them. "Cowards, hold the line, we are the Empire." The Terran voice came one last time, calm as stone. "Leave now, or be erased." But Kravos would not leave. He ordered all weapons to fire, all engines to advance, and the Terrans answered with fire of their own. The first strike of Terran space had begun, and already the Empire was breaking. The Empire's pride news of the disaster reached the Emperor like a storm. The council chamber echoed with fear and confusion. Reports spoke of invisible ships, silent weapons, and entire fleets erased without a sound. Some counselors begged for peace. Some whispered that the Terrans were untouchable, but the Emperor did not listen. Pride was carved into his heart. For centuries, the Empire had crushed all who resisted, and he would not bend to a warning from Earth. He stood tall before his people, his voice sharp. "The Terrans hide behind shadows, but shadows cannot stop fire. We are the Empire, and we will not kneel." His words spread across the stars. The Empire prepared for war on a scale unseen in generations. From dozens of systems, fleets were summoned, battleships, dreadnoughts, carriers. Thousands of ships formed a tide of steel. Every dockyard roared with activity. Every soldier was told the same thing: humanity will fall. But among the common soldiers, fear lingered. Stories of the vanished ships moved like whispers in the dark. Veterans spoke of the hum that crawled into their skulls. Others remembered the voice that spoke not with anger, but with certainty. "Leave now, or be erased." And still they marched to war, for no soldier could defy the Emperor's will. Admiral Kravos, still alive after the first strike, was summoned to lead again. His pride had not broken, but his eyes carried a shadow. He told the Emperor, "Their weapons are beyond ours. Their silence hides a strength we cannot measure." But the Emperor's pride burned hotter. "Then measure it with fire," he ordered. Soon, the largest fleet in Imperial history gathered at the border of Terran space. It stretched across the stars, row after row of warships, enough to blot out the light of nearby suns. The soldiers cheered, trying to drown their fear. The Emperor himself broadcast across the fleet. "This is the strength of the Empire. No power can stand against us." The Terran warning came again. Calm, simple, unchanging. "Terran space is closed. This is your last warning." Many expected the Emperor to respond with fury, but instead he laughed. His laughter echoed through the channels. "Terran voices are ghosts. They cannot stand against living fire." He ordered the advance, and the tide of ships surged forward. The border was crossed. Thousands of Imperial warships moved into Terran space, engines blazing, weapons charged. Their formation was perfect, their numbers overwhelming. No enemy appeared. Only silence, only stars. But silence is never empty. Hours passed and still nothing appeared. The Emperor grew impatient. He demanded proof of Terran weakness. He ordered Admiral Kravos to press deeper. Kravos obeyed, though his hands were cold. He had seen the silence before. He knew it was a trap. Then the first signal came. From the far side of the void, shapes emerged. Not dozens, not hundreds, only a handful. Terran warships drifted out. Of the shadows, their hulls were black, their edges sharp like blades of night. Compared to the Empire's grand fleet, they were few, but their presence froze every Imperial heart, because each Terran ship was larger than anything the Empire had built, larger than dreadnoughts, larger than carriers. Their silhouettes blocked out entire clusters of stars. The galaxy itself seemed smaller beside them. The soldiers whispered, "How can so few stand against so many?" But Admiral Kravos understood. Numbers meant nothing in the void. Weapons and will decided battles, and the Terrans had both. The Emperor's voice thundered through the comms. "Fire! Erase them!" Thousands of Imperial weapons roared at once. The void lit up with fire brighter than suns. Plasma, missiles, beams. Everything hurled against the Terran ships. But when the light faded, the Terran ships still stood. Their hulls glowed faintly, their shields unbroken, not a single mark scarred. Their surfaces, and then they answered. With a soundless strike, one Terran supercarrier fired. A single beam, thin and sharp, cut across the fleet. Entire rows of Imperial ships vanished in a single sweep. No wreckage, no survivors, only dust drifting in the void. The silence returned, heavier than before. The Terran voice spoke again. Calm, merciless. "You were warned." And for the first time in his reign, the Emperor's pride cracked. Fire across the stars. The first Terran strike had carved through the Emperor's fleet like a blade through glass. Thousands of Imperial soldiers watched in silence as their brothers and sisters vanished in a single beam. Their voices trembled, their eyes wide, but still the Emperor ordered war. "Advance, crush them," he roared across the channels. His pride was louder than fear. The Imperial fleet surged forward, weapons burning brighter than suns. The void erupted in fire. Millions of plasma bolts cut across the darkness. Missiles screamed. Beams of energy cracked the stars themselves. The Empire unleashed its fury, the kind of storm that had erased entire civilizations before. The soldiers screamed with rage, hoping to bury their fear in noise, but the Terrans did not meet noise with noise. They met it with silence. From the black, Terran ships moved like shadows. Their hulls swallowed light. Their weapons burned with precision. Railgun slugs, faster than thought, pierced through Imperial shields as, if they were nothing, each round tore ships in half, leaving nothing but drifting wreckage. Then came the drones. At first, the Empire thought they were debris, tiny fragments spinning from destroyed ships. But then the fragments moved. Thousands of small, sharp machines unfolded from the Terran carriers. They swarmed like a living storm, each one armed with weapons of impossible speed. The drones struck the Imperial fleet from every angle, slicing through armor, disabling engines, cutting communications. Soldiers screamed into dead channels. Commanders shouted for order. But the swarm drowned their voices. Admiral Kravos watched from his bridge, his heart heavy. He had fought 100 wars, but never like this. "They are not fighting us ship to ship," he whispered. "They are erasing us." The Emperor's flagship fired its main cannon, a weapon that had shattered moons. The beam roared through the void, striking a Terran warship head-on. The galaxy held its breath. But when the light faded, the Terran ship was still there. Its shield rippled once, then went still, and then it answered, a single railgun fired. The round tore through the Emperor's Second Fleet command ship, splitting it apart in silence. No explosion, just dust drifting away. The fleet froze, their courage breaking. The Terran voice returned, calm as always. "You were warned. This is the price of pride." In the chaos, some Imperial ships tried to flee. Engines flared as destroyers and frigates turned back toward safety. But the drones cut them down without mercy. Terran AI-driven hunters moved faster than human eyes could follow. They struck the fleeing ships with precision, leaving no survivors one by one. The proud Imperial fleet became a graveyard. Fire floated across the stars. Wreckage drifted like broken bones. Still the Emperor shouted. Still he demanded victory. "We are the Empire. We cannot fall to primitives." But his voice trembled, and everyone heard it. On Kravos's bridge, officers begged him to retreat, their faces pale, their voices breaking. "Admiral, we cannot win. We must live to fight again." But Kravos only looked at the void, at the Terran ship standing silent, unmoving, watching. "This is not war," he whispered. "This is judgment." The Terran carriers shifted, their hulls glowing with strange energy. Then in unison they fired. Not beams, not missiles, but something far older and far more final. A pulse swept across the void, invisible to the eye but deadly to every Imperial system. Engines died, weapons froze, shields collapsed. Entire rows of ships went dark at once. Soldiers screamed as their ships turned cold, powerless, drifting in the black. The Terrans had shut down the fleet with a single wave of force, and then silence. The battle was over. The Empire's grandest fleet, the pride of centuries, hung broken and still, drifting in Terran space. The Terran ships did not move closer. They did not fire again. They only watched, silent and unshaken. Finally, the voice returned, colder than ever. "Terran space is closed. Leave and never return." But there was no fleet left to leave. The aftermath, the fire of battle had faded. But the silence that followed was worse. The Emperor's fleet, once the largest armada the galaxy had ever seen, now drifted as shattered debris. Broken hulls spun slowly through the void, sparks fading into the black. A graveyard of pride floated. In Terran space, no cheers rose from the survivors because there were none. Only a handful of crippled ships limped away, their engines stuttering, their comms filled with screams. Admiral Kravos's flagship was among them, scarred and smoking. His crew stared at him with hollow eyes. They had seen death before, but never like this. The Terran ships did not chase. They did not finish the survivors. They only watched from the shadows, silent and still, like hunters, letting the wounded prey crawl home. When the broken fleet returned to Imperial space, the galaxy trembled. Worlds that had once bowed to the Empire now whispered in fear. If the greatest fleet could be destroyed in hours, what chance did anyone else have? The Emperor hid the truth. His broadcast claimed victory. He declared the Terrans had been humbled, that Imperial fire had burned their defenses. But rumors traveled faster than lies. Merchants whispered of empty fleets. Soldiers told of black ships that swallowed light. Survivors whispered of a voice that cut deeper than any blade. You were warned. Soon, the truth was undeniable. Images of wreckage leaked, pieces of Imperial ships found drifting at the border. Even neutral traders carried the news. Across the galaxy, a new phrase spread like fire. Terran space is off limits. In council chambers of other civilizations, leaders spoke in hushed tones. Some wanted to ally with the Terrans, some wanted to avoid them completely. A few dreamed of learning Terran secrets, but none dared to test the warning. For the first time, the galaxy turned its gaze toward Earth with respect and fear. Meanwhile, the Empire cracked from within. Admiral Kravos stood trial for failure. The Emperor demanded a scapegoat. Soldiers begged for mercy, but Kravos did not defend himself. He only said one thing before the court: "You cannot fight shadows with pride." His words spread like wildfire. And though the Emperor silenced him, the people remembered. Among the lower ranks, fear became defiance. Families wept for their dead. Colonies questioned the Emperor's orders. Some governors refused to send more ships, saying it was madness to challenge the Terrans again. The galaxy had always known the Empire as unshakable, but now, cracks spread through its core, all because of one border. One silence, one warning. On distant neutral worlds, children whispered legends. Do not cross into human space. Traders painted Terran symbols on their ships, hoping for safe passage. Smugglers told stories of black warships drifting at the edge of sight, waiting, watching. Even in the halls of the Emperor, unease grew. His closest counselors spoke carefully. Their pride was gone, replaced by dread. One night, alone, the Emperor stared at a star map. His hand trembled as he marked the edge of Terran space with red. Forbidden, he whispered, and yet, humanity did not expand. They did not claim new worlds or conquer neighbors. They only guarded their silence. Their ships remained unseen. Their voices rare. That silence was their greatest weapon. It made the galaxy wonder. If they can do this while hidden, what can they do if angered? In the years that followed, Terran space became a legend. No empire dared to cross it. No fleet dared to test it. And every time a reckless ship drew too close, it vanished without a trace. The galaxy had learned a lesson carved in blood. Earth's warning was not a bluff. Terran space was closed forever. The legend years passed, but the silence of Terran space did not fade. It grew heavier with time, like a shadow stretching across the stars. The Empire, once proud and unshakable, was no longer feared. It had lost its fleets, its power, and its voice, all because it ignored a warning carved into the void. Whispers spread across every world. In markets, children played games where they pretended to be Terran ships, vanishing into shadows. In taverns, smugglers swore they had seen dark silhouettes drifting near forbidden space. Watching with silent eyes, merchants marked their star charts with thick red lines circling Terran territory, writing one word beside it: never. Stories became myths, myths became legends, and legends became law. In the far colonies, when fleets gathered to train, officers repeated an old phrase: fight as you will, but never in Terran space. On neutral stations, pilots carved warnings into steel walls. The silence will take you. Even criminals, fearless in every other part of the galaxy, refused to cross into human borders. They called it the graveyard that breathes. The Empire tried to rebuild. The Emperor declared new fleets, new weapons, new pride. But every soldier who boarded those ships remembered the screams, the silence, the black warships that blotted out stars. Recruits trembled at the very thought of orders that might send them back toward Terran borders. In time, governors broke away, colonies declared independence. Some claimed loyalty to the Terrans, though humanity never spoke to them. The Empire shrank until it was only a shadow of itself, and the galaxy no longer bowed to its throne. And through it all, the Terrans never spoke again. They never expanded, never claimed new systems, never demanded tribute. They only guarded. Silent warships drifted at the edge of their borders, invisible to scanners, appearing only when needed. And every time a ship grew bold enough to test them, silence answered. Admiral Kravos's last words lived on. You cannot fight shadows with pride. Generations repeated them like prayer. Scholars studied the battle of Terran space, trying to understand the weapons, the drones, the pulse that shut down fleets. But none could. Humanity's secrets remained hidden. In quiet corners of the galaxy, people began to wonder if humanity was even human anymore. Some said Earth had risen beyond flesh, becoming something greater. Some said the Terrans had made a pact with the void itself to turn silence into a weapon. Whatever the truth, one fact remained. No one dared to find out. At the border of Terran space, a single ship was always seen. Black as night, larger than cities, drifting without motion. Some said it was unmanned, a sentinel that watched forever. Others claimed it carried a crew of immortals, guardians of Earth's vow, but no one approached because those who tried never returned. And so the galaxy learned to live with the silence, to fear it, to respect it. The Empire's fall was not remembered as the end of power. It was remembered as the beginning of legend, the legend of Earth, the legend of Terran space, a place forbidden, untouched, eternal. Generals taught their soldiers with one lesson above. All the Terrans warned us once. They will not warn again. And across the stars, when night grew quiet, when space seemed too dark, a whisper moved from world to world, carried like a ghost in the void. Do not cross into Terran space. The silence waits,